Hello and welcome to a new edition of True Audio Files. Going to be talking today about Johnny Cash live at Folsom Prison, or Johnny Cash at Folsom Prison, as the album title is worded. So the big reason why I am doing that is because Mofi just released a new 45 RPM 2LP set. I just got it in the mail this week. Got a nice gatefold. I have number 379 out of the group. It was, as usual, transferred from a master tape. It looks like they actually used an analog copy of the master tape to DSD, and then they cut it onto here LPs at 45 RPM. No super vinyl or anything like that. So, was really looking forward to this. I'm a big Johnny Cash fan. I have the previous one they did. I think it was I Walk the Line. I don't remember the name of the title, but I believe that was what it was called. Anyway, got the other Mobile Fidelity Johnny Cash that was released a few years back. That sold out immediately when it first came out. I think this one is still available, but I'm doing this one, and I'm going to be shooting it out with a couple of different variations. One is I've got a couple of first pressings of the album. I mean, this might be a second pressing, but essentially, I think it's a super early pressing. Might be a first. This one definitely is a first pressing. And then I also have a really cool set that came out for Record Store Day a couple years back. Pardon the crinkling noise, but I'm trying to get the wrapping together, or the covering together. But basically, it is a big box set. It's the complete Folsom Prison recordings. And basically, he did 2 shows there. And they also have his rehearsals recorded as well. And it's on, I think it's 5 records. Yeah, I think it's 5 records. And it was a limited edition. I want to say it was 2,500 copies, if I'm not mistaken. I got number 280. So, again, I know it doesn't make that big of a deal. But if I had to venture a guess, I would venture that this was probably done similar to Mofi, where they basically transferred it from the tapes to a high-resolution audio, did the mastering, and then cut the vinyl. Because I know that initially, before this box set came out, there was another box set, which I happen to have here, which was the CD box set, which essentially is the same. I don't think that the rehearsals are on this one, though. It doesn't look like it is. It does have a DVD that came with it also, but it was basically 2 CDs, so it was show 1 and show 2, and then a DVD that came with this box set. So that was what I believe these were taken from, with the additional rehearsals recording, which I think it sounded like they just kind of used a tape recorder of some sort. It certainly wasn't high fidelity, but it was cool to have. So anyway, wanted to kind of go over how I typically do these for those of you who are new to my channel. When I get these, I listen to the new reissue, because that's usually when I do these, all the way through, first off, to try to get a sense for which song or songs would be the best songs to listen to A-B compare against. And then I will do the A-B comparisons between the different versions of the album. So, as is always the case, I did the new reissue, which in this case was the 45 RPM. And, first impressions were, first, I thought it sounded really good. I thought, it had decent bass, it had good high end. The vinyl was pretty quiet, although at the beginning of on the first record, both sides, it was a little bit noisy at the beginning, but by the end it was super clean and super clear and super quiet, I should say. Record 2 seemed to not have any issues with the issues that the first record had, but it was minor to say the least, because once the music came on, you didn't hear it. So, but I thought they had a good soundstage. I mean, you have to take consideration this was a live recording done in the 60s at a prison. I don't think that this is by any stretch an audiophile recording. I don't think it was ever intended to be an audiophile recording, but I would say for a live recording done in the 60s, it actually, it sounds pretty decent, and they did a pretty decent job mastering this one, where you've got a great 3D sound stage, you've got the good differentiation between the different instruments and vocals and things on that nature. So I then played the first pressing, and it sounded spectacular too. And actually, a couple of the notes that I kind of noticed when I was playing through the big thing that was pretty noticeable is there was definitely more noise on the vinyl than there was on the vinyl that the Mofi had, but it wasn't all that much more, and it wasn't terrible. And again, most of it was inaudible once you started listening to the music, and the fact that it's a live album, there's very little space where there's any kind of quiet part in it. So super good sound quality. I would say the biggest differences that I noticed between the two recordings were that the original early first pressing definitely had, I felt, a little bit more mid-range and a little bit deeper bass, which I was kind of surprised about because the Mofis usually do a great job of getting deep bass. I would say the Mofi may have had a smidge more upper bass in it, but and definitely had more treble. Not as much treble as I've been hearing in some of the masterings lately by Mofi. It was definitely not over. I don't think I would have a hard time believing that anybody would feel that there was too much treble on this recording, but there certainly was more than the original early and first pressings, I should say. So from an EQ standpoint, that was the differences between the two. And then when it comes to the sound stage may have been a little tiny bit wider on the Mofi, but it definitely had a more 3D immersive feel to it than the original. Even though the original definitely sounded good, it had a pretty deep sound stage, a pretty wide one. Again, the Mofi maybe a little bit wider, but it just, that enveloping sound, the 3D space that the Mofis just tend to do a really good job of, was definitely something that was noticeable on this one as well. So I would definitely give the edge on the Mofi for that. And so between the two, I guess it's really a question of what you're looking for. I mean, you probably can get an original first pressing, or at least an early pressing of Folsom County or Folsom Prison for less than this Mofi, which I think retails for $60. But so I don't know if there's enough of a difference to say that if you're not an audiophile person and if you're not nitpicky about the soundstage things I just described, I'm not sure if it'll be worth that extra money to you. To me, it's an important album to me, and it was definitely a noticeable difference, and it was something that definitely got me more involved in the recording, if you will. I'm more excited about the recording, so I definitely appreciated that, and to me it was worth it. So the casual listener, I don't think you're going to notice much, if any, of a difference, and you're not going to have to get up the extra times to flip the record because it's 2 LPs. It's only 1 LP for the original. I compared the two early pressings I had, and I really couldn't hear any difference. If there was a difference, it was pretty subtle. I just couldn't hear it. Now, I did put on the Record Store Day version, and the one thing that jumped out to me, and I should have done a little bit more research before I came on and recorded this, but it seems pretty evident to me that these complete recordings and of both shows are kind of raw, somewhat not somewhat uncut, not fiddled with or fudged with versions of the concerts, because there's definitely a difference. Like, there's some crowd noises and some things that Johnny Cash does during the performance on these uncut versions that you don't hear on the regular recordings, the either the Mofi or the first pressings. He does some yelling, and you hear some yelling in the audience that you don't hear on the record store day versions. So those were definitely seemed like unedited, unaltered, kind of just raw recordings of those concerts. So as they stood. So that was kind of an interesting thing. So if you can get a copy of that, I recommend it because it's really awesome if you really like this album. I think that it kind of had a similar EQ to, it kind of had a mix between the two in terms of EQ. I think it had the treble and kind of actually probably closest from a EQ standpoint to the Mofi than the early pressing. But it definitely had a narrower soundstage. I think it even had a narrower soundstage than the first and early pressings did too. So, but it was just different recordings, so it's really hard to really gauge the sound just because they were different. So I'm not putting a whole lot of weight on comparing that to those other ones just for that reason. So that's everything I've got. So bottom line here is for you to know, not a huge difference between the first and early pressings and the 45 RPM Mofi. The biggest differences being more treble, and on the Mofi, a little bit more mid-range, a little bit more deep bass on the first pressing, better sound stage, especially the 3D feel and the immersive feel to it on the Mofi. So that is everything I have for this episode. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit that like button. If you subscribe to my channel, I want to thank you. If not, please subscribe to it. And if you want to know when my new videos come out, hit that alert bell. So that's everything I have for this week. So thank you very much. You have yourself a good rest of the day and a good rest of your week. Thanks a lot.